Guys, how are you doing? Welcome back. My name is John, and if you have been following this channel, you will know that this is actually my wife's Trident 660. So today I'm going to bring you a very important video for this motorcycle, which will be about chain tension, because chain tension on this particular bike is probably much different to anything you have ever experienced before on a road motorcycle. And of course, not getting it right will lead to excessive chain and sprocket wear. Worst case scenario, your chain jumping off, breaking, or even damaging your gearbox. So please watch this video all the way through, understand it, go measure your chain afterwards and make sure it is actually in spec, because sometimes even the service shops get this one wrong. Before I start my video, I will, however, like to apologize to you guys, my viewers, and to Triumph, because when I did my presentation video of this motorcycle, where of course I gave you my honest opinion, and I'll leave a card up here just in case you guys would like to go and check it out, I did say that I received her from the shop with a very, very loose chain. And as strange as it did seem to me at the time, it was pointed out by Scott McDonald over on the Facebook Trident owners page, and he has some fantastic carbon fiber goodies for this motorcycle. So if you like that kind of stuff, please go check him out. That the chain was probably actually in spec. So of course I grabbed the owner's manual, took a few measurements, and the chain was practically in spec. It was just off about maybe 2 or 3 millimeters, so I do apologize for that. However, I personally did not like the way the bike behaved with such a loose chain, because I could already feel a little bit of chain lash and knocking whilst changing gears. But of course, I'm not smarter than a group of Triumph engineers, so I will always be adjusting this chain to spec. But I will always try to adjust her in the tightest possible position that the owner's manual says you can, which will be 43 millimeters of slack. So to make this video easier for you guys to watch, I'm actually going to be dividing it into chapters. On the first chapter, I'm going to show you exactly how to measure this chain, and please pay attention to this one because it's different to any other bike that I have had in the past. On the second chapter, I'm going to show you the difference in between the tightest and the most loose position that the owner's manual says you can adjust the chain, which will be 43 to 55 millimeters of slack, just so you can understand the difference. And then in the third chapter, I'm just going to quickly take you through the whole process of adjusting the chain slack on this motorcycle. So guys, if it seems like this video will interest you, please tag along. Let's get on with it. So the first thing the owner's manual says about adjusting the slack of this chain is that the motorbike has to be in its upright position. So the best thing would be to get someone else to hold up the motorcycle. If for some reason you cannot, just put some height underneath the side stand to lift the bike up to make her as straight as possible. And it's not really going to make much of a difference because I have already tried it. One of the most important aspects when you're trying to adjust the slack of your chain is to make sure that the chain is at its tightest point, okay? So for that, you just have to spin the rear wheel and keep on fiddling around with the chain to make sure it is in its tightest spot. Or you can go forwards and backwards on your motorcycle and check out with your finger, or otherwise you can just use some kind of jack to jack up the rear wheel, rotate the wheel and find the tightest spot. So now, where do we actually start measuring this chain? On this particular motorcycle, we're going to measure the chain tension at this curve here, okay? So it's always going to be here, basically where the rubber swing arm protection finishes, okay? So we're going to put the tape measure here. Now, with the tape measure in the correct position, we are going to measure from the angle of the swing arm, like I explained a while ago, just after the protection of the swing arm, all the way down to the middle of the pins on the chain, okay? So it's not at the top of the chain, not at the bottom of the chain, it is actually at exactly the center of the pins. So as soon as we have that positioned, we're just going to press the chain down. You don't have to force it down, okay? Just press it down slightly and check the measurement. So in this case of this chain, we'll have 43 millimeters. That's perfect. Guys, there you have it. That's how you should actually be measuring the chain on this motorcycle. So on the next chapter, I'm going to show you the difference in between the minimum and maximum specification that the owner's manual says, which will be 43 to 55 millimeters of slack, just so you can understand the difference. Let's go. Second chapter. For this section of the video, I'm actually going to use my nifty little swing arm jack. I usually take it with me on my travels to do chain maintenance, and I'm going to show you how it works because it's actually quite practical. I wouldn't use this jack to change the rear wheel, for example, because I do not find it sturdy enough, but for chain maintenance it's perfect. So let's go. I'm going to show you how it works, and I'm also going to leave a link in the description box below if for some reason you'd like to get one yourself. Let's go. Now, before jacking up your rear wheel, you are always going to want to clamp the front brake, okay? So in this case, I'm going to use a little bit of shoelace, but if I'm out on the road, I don't have shoelace, I'll take off my belt, use a rubber glove, use a zip tie, anything. Most important thing, don't forget, if you're jacking up your rear wheel, clamp that front brake so the bike doesn't move forwards or backwards. With the bike nice and secure, we can start jacking up the rear wheel. At this moment, the chain is actually in spec, so I'm just going to show you the difference of what the chain will feel like at its tightest point and its loosest point, okay? So this would be more or less what it looks like at its loosest point. See? Let's just spin the wheel a little bit. And this would be at its tightest point, okay? So loosest point. And here is the tightest point. Okay, so this is with the chain at 43 millimeters of slack. Now I'm going to put the chain at 55, which would be the highest slack range that the owner's manual says you can adjust this chain, and we just see a difference. And this is what the chain is going to look like at its highest range of slack, which will be 55 millimeters. So at this range, it's almost impossible to find out where the tightest spot of the chain actually is. But you know, this is how the chain looks, and this is actually, it's still in spec, just in spec, 55 millimeters. So as you can see from the owner's manual, this bike actually allows for quite a lot of slack. But as I said before, I do not like the way the bike behaves with such a loose chain. So now I'm going to tighten her back up, and I'm going to show you the whole process for the third chapter. Here we go then. Do not forget the first steps, which is leveling up the bike and making sure the chain is at its tightest spot, okay? So first off, we're going to loosen the axle nut. Next step, you're going to want to loosen these bolts here, the first one, and then tighten the second one, which will be the one closest to the swing arm. Turn it about a quarter turn each time, okay? So about here, quarter turn. Now measure. So that there just took off just a couple of millimeters. So we're going to turn the nut a little bit more. Another half turn here, a quarter, half turn. Now back to measuring. So let's see where we are at now. Okay, so we have 37 without pressing down, press down 45. So just going to give her, no, we're not going to give her any more nudges, okay? So we are at about 37 without touching it, and pressing down a little bit, we are at 45. But now we're going to have to adjust the other side, the other nut, exactly the same amount as we adjusted this side here. And the idea for that is to center the wheel. So if you look here, you can see that this nut here has 4 little spots. Pay attention to this, okay, because this bike is a little bit tricky, because it has on this side, on the left side, it has a little sort of, it's the protection of it's the holder for the mud guard. It goes on top of the spots that are actually originally on the swing arm that marks the chain tension, okay, to make sure that they're the same on both sides. So on this side here, if you look closely, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're just past the 5th one, okay? So now we're going to try and make the one on the other side exactly the same. So on this side here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 also. We're at the 5th one, but I don't think it's exactly the same. So I'm just going to tighten her a little bit to see if we can make her the same as what's on the other side, okay? So this is what's going to make your chain nice and straight. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Okay, so now we're going to come back and measure the chain. Don't forget, at this point, you're doing the last adjustment, so the bike has to be standing up, okay? So you have to get someone else to help you. If you can't, just put something underneath the side stand, as I did. Okay, so now we have 35 millimeters without pressing down. 35 millimeters, and when you press down,
just ever so slightly. You don't have to force the chain down, okay? Just press her down. Okay, I think we're in that range. If I press hard, she'll go up to 5, of course, but if I press down ever so slightly, the chain will go down to 43 millimeters of slack, and so that is exactly how I want her. Now with everything set, we're going to tighten up the rear axle. Before I tighten this nut, I will, however, want to block the chain so the wheel doesn't move forwards or backwards, okay? So for that, or you can try to clamp the chain as hard as possible, or otherwise, like me, I'll just use a piece of cloth here, just stick it in the chain, make sure the chain is nice and tight before I start tightening the rear nut. Nice and tight. It's important to tighten it as much as possible, but not too tight, so you can't untighten it if you actually need to next time, okay? Okay, here you go, happy with that. Next step, I'm just going to tighten these bolts here, one against the other, to make sure that they don't go anywhere. So let's just hold this bolt here in place. Just give it a little bit of a tighten, that's okay. And let's tighten it against this one. Okay, that's fine. Now you can do the same thing on one side and then on the other. So now with everything tightened, I'm just going to look around, make sure everything is okay. So let's just check the chain alignment here with these little holes here, these markings. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 and just about a half more or less. Let's check the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, so that's good. Now I'm just going to check the slack on the chain. Just make sure she is exactly where I want her. So without pressing down, she will have practically about 3.38, 39 millimeters. So when we press her down, she's going to go to about 44, 45 millimeters. So it could have been a little bit tighter, but in any way, I'm happy with that.
So I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you like the content, don't forget to subscribe. My next video for this motorcycle will possibly be the installation of original Triumph heated grips. So if it seems like that may interest you, don't forget to subscribe and possibly even push the notification bell. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, my name is John. Take care.